Each year, 500 people in ancient Athens are chosen by its populace to run the government, head the armies, and make the laws. This was the first instance of what we call today democracy. The conversion of voter preferences into election winners, the various definitions of fair and equal, and the strategies which guarantee expand the mathematics involved in voting systems to be more than mere counting. In this video, we will be discussing the various criteria that determine fairness, the various voting methods, some mathematical concepts of voting, the various theories and limits of voting, and the countries which use or discussed voting methods. In order to continue our discussion, we will need to learn about the preferential ballot and the preferential table. A preferential ballot is a list which shows how a particular voter ranks his chosen candidates. A preferential table is a collection of preferential ballots with a number above them, indicating how many voters voted in the manner indicated by the ballot. There are many conditions that a voting method must satisfy to be considered fair, which we call the fairness criteria. Due to the amount of criteria present, there will inevitably be limitations for every voting method, which will be discussed later. The main fairness criteria we will be using are the majority criterion, where the candidate with more than 50% of the first place votes must be the winner of the voting method. Condorcet winning method, where if every candidate competes against each other one on one, the overall winner of this one on one competition must also be the overall winner of the actual voting method. Independence of irrelevant alternatives criterion, where removing non winners must not change the winner of the voting method. Monotonicity criterion, where a winner should remain a winner in a re election if the changes made are all beneficial to the winner. Pareto criterion, where a universally more preferred candidate should not lose against a universally less preferred candidate. Unanimity, where an outcome universally more preferred than any other outcome should be the final outcome. Anonymity or equality of voters, where all voters have equal individual voting power. Non dictatorship, where there must be no single voter that determines the outcome of the election, regardless of the tallied result. Reversal symmetry criterion or equality of candidates, where all candidates have an equal chance of winning. In the event of two candidates, reversing the received votes should also reverse the result. Beyond the main criteria already discussed, there are other less known yet equally important criteria to take note of. Participation criterion, where there should be no possible situation for a voting method wherein voting for your favorite candidate causes them to lose, or you not voting for your favorite candidate causes them to win. Woodall's resolvability criterion, where adding more voters lessens the possibility of the tie. Tiedemann's resolvability criterion, where one vote must always be capable of breaking a tie. And the Condorcet losing criterion, where if every candidate competes against each other one on one, the worst loser of this one on one competition must not win in the actual voting method. While the basis of winning is having more votes than your opponent, there are many ways of interpreting and converting these votes into an election result. These are called the voting methods. They are made to accommodate various traits, mainly the various fairness criteria, but may also include the capacity to handle rankings, lessening the likelihood of a tie, and electing compromise candidates, rather than candidates winning through sheer numbers. The most common voting methods are the following: the majority rules method, where the candidate with more than 50% of the vote wins. If no candidate reaches 50%, a re election is held. The plurality method, where the candidate with the most votes wins. Condorcet method, where each candidate competes one on one against each other. The candidate that beats the most number of candidates one on one wins. Hare system, where the majority rules winner wins, but in the event that no candidate wins by majority, the least voted candidate is eliminated, the votes are redistributed, and the results are recalculated until a winner is determined. The board account method, where the candidate with the most number of points wins. The points that a candidate receives from any particular ballot is the number of votes for that ballot multiplied by the number of points equivalent to their ranking on the ballot. The points equivalent to each ranking is defined as the number of rankings present minus the order of that ranking. First ranking gives n minus 1 points, while the last ranking gives n minus n or 0 points. Sequential pairwise method, where the candidate that remains after all candidates have been compared wins. The method uses an arbitrary ordering of candidates for comparing called the agenda. The first and second candidate on the agenda are compared, and the winner is compared to the third, and the winner of that pairing is compared to the fourth, until the agenda has been completed and the last candidate is determined who wins. Approval voting, where the candidate with the most number of votes wins, but voters may vote for multiple candidates. For a particular ballot, all candidates chosen in that ballot receives one vote and no ranking is considered. It is unlikely that you will encounter any mention of the textbook voting methods in real life. Rather, they are elements of voting systems, which we will discuss now. They include additional rules which allow for additional desirable traits beyond the voting methods. First, past the post, which receives its name from British horse racing. It is a single winner, single choice, plurality based voting system. Ranked voting, which includes all voting systems that use rankings. These systems are those that use the Condorcet method, the Hare system, the ward account, and the sequential pairwise method. Multiple non transferable vote, which includes all voting systems that allow for multiple votes but does not include the shifting of votes. These systems include, but are not limited to, those that use the approval voting method and necessarily exclude voting systems that use the Hare system. Instant runoff vote, which is a voting system that uses the Hare system. Some forms of the instant runoff vote eliminate all but the top two candidates, rather than a one-by-one elimination, which allows for both preferential ballots and ballots with only one selected candidate. The winner is decided by majority rules. Exhaustive ballot, which is a voting system that is similar to the Hare system, but exclusively uses ballots with one selected candidate. If no candidate wins by majority rules, a second election is held, either with the least voted candidate being eliminated per round, or only the top two candidates on the last vote. Single transferable vote, which includes all multiple winner, single choice voting systems. It utilizes the Hare system but treats excess votes from eliminated candidates and excess votes from already winning candidates the same. The single transferable vote is a voting method that has a ceiling or a required number of votes that each candidate must receive. If excess votes for a candidate are present, they are treated similar to excess votes from eliminated candidates, and their next preferences are awarded their votes. The required number of votes, called the quota, is calculated in different ways. Hare quota. The Hare quota is the original quota that was used with the single transferable vote method, both of which were attributed to Thomas Hare, along with the Hare system voting method. It is defined as the total number of valid votes that were cast divided by the number of winners to be chosen. The Droop quota. The Droop quota was devised by Henry Richmond Droop as an alternative to the Hare quota and is the most widely used quota. It is defined as the integer portion of the total number of valid votes divided by the total number of winners plus 1, all plus 1. Hagenbach-Bischoff quota. The Hagenbach-Bischoff quota is another alternative to the Hare quota. In some cases, the quota can result in more winners being chosen than there are seats available, but it will never result in a particular group of candidates with a majority of the vote to have a minority of the seats. It is defined as the total number of valid votes divided by the total number of winners plus 1. While it would be preferable to have a one-size-fits-all method for voting, the use of mathematics in the voting process, while impartial, makes it inflexible. No voting method can fulfill every fairness criterion, as they are subjective and can contradict each other mathematically. These are some of the theorems which explain these contradictions, along with some exceptions. May's theorem. This theorem states that given two candidates, an odd number of voters, and a condition that no ties are allowed, the majority rules method is the best method also offering anonymity to the voters, neutrality between candidates, and satisfies the monotonicity criterion. Gibbard-Satterthwaite theorem. This theorem states that no voting method is resistant to tactical voting, where voting against your personal preferences is more beneficial to your preferred result than voting sincerely, unless there are only two candidates or if the system is dictatorial. Arrow's impossibility theorem. This theorem states that given three or more candidates and two or more voters, no voting method will be able to satisfy all elements of the following set of fairness criteria: non-dictatorship, Pareto criterion, independence of relevant alternatives criterion, unrestricted domain, where all voting preferences are allowed, and social ordering, and the ability to rank candidates. While many voting systems exist, only a few are used in elections, but often with large enough modifications that there are more varieties for a single method than there are methods to use overall. Categorized roughly, these are the major voting systems in elections around the world. Majority and plurality voting. While still relatively ubiquitous, as shown by the green countries, the plurality and the majority rules method have often been considered as poor choices for real life elections, as they restrict the preferences of the voters to one candidate, and unless an area has an unusually high amount of a single kind of voter, a large minority will be represented by a candidate they did not vote for. Hair system. Due to the fact that there's only one leader for nearly all countries, not every voter's preference can be considered. As a compromise, the Hare system allows voters to change their votes should their first preference be eliminated, either through the exhaustive ballot system or the instant runoff system. The countries that use these are colored in light green, notably only eliminating candidates once. Board account. The board count is the least used method in actual elections, as the Hare system and proportional representation are already adequately representative of the voters, while countries with neither are likely to still have the plurality or majority rules method. In smaller elections, it is even possible that one of the varieties of the Condorcet method is used. The board account is only substantially used by the countries of Nauru and Kiribati. Organizations are often not bound to their clients as governments are to their citizens. Thus, a wider variety of voting methods can be used, such as approval voting in the UN and various academic institutions, the board account, Condorcet voting, and the Hare system in sports organizations, and the Hare system in the Academy Awards. The sequential pairwise voting is often seen in government, but in the lawmaking process rather than in elections. In the pursuit of fairness, we have made many criteria that we require with our systems, and systems that fulfill those requirements. Even with these many methods, the idea remains the same: democracy and the people's choice. Thank you for watching and have a great day.